Welcome, everyone. Thanks so much for joining in. So, this is a very interesting topic to me. This is a quote from Bruno Groening. The good attracts evil, and evil attracts the good. The good wants to overcome evil. Evil wants to destroy the good. That's a little intense. The good attracts evil. What? Initially, that doesn't really seem to make any sense. Why would what is good attract evil? And then simultaneously, and evil attracts the good. What? So, first, a little context. So, Bruno Groening said that evil operates here on this planet in a way that it doesn't operate anywhere else in God's creation. So that's a bit of a metaphysical topic, right? It's a little bit theoretical, which is something that Bruno Groening didn't spend a lot of time talking about. He didn't talk a lot about the afterlife and the universe, and he kept things very simple. And yet on this topic, he said that evil operates here in a sense, has not so much free reign, but kind of in a sense has free reign in a way that it doesn't anywhere else in the universe. And so on the one hand, it's like, oh my God, get me out of here. Evil is so prevalent here, Kirk to Enterprise, one to beam up. However, Bruno Groening also said trillions of souls are lined up waiting for the opportunity for a life here on Earth. So, to the human mind, it would seem like, oh my God, there's evil here. Get me out of here. This is awful. However, even evil in the end serves the good. It's a pretty deep paradox. And Bruno Groening said that it's only here on this earth that a human being can release themselves from all evil and quote, fully enter into God. So while evil operates very profoundly here on this planet, there's also a very precious opportunity. And he also said again and again that during our life here on this earth, it was possible to free ourselves from evil. Almost in a sense that we get to come here and face evil and overcome it and make right the wrongs we've done in the past. So on the one hand, being here on this earth is exceptionally challenging because evil is so prevalent. On the other hand, it's an amazing, amazing spiritual opportunity. Bruno Groening spoke of this over and over again, that our life here on this earth and time here on this earth is precious. So that's the background, that we're here on earth in a body, and that things operate a little bit differently here on earth than they do elsewhere. So back to the original quote. The good attracts evil. Evil attracts the good. So Bruno Groening sometimes he spoke of life as a game. And one of the fundamentals of this game is this draw between good and evil. That, he said that once one really commits and really gets solid on the spiritual path, that evil will do everything in its power to get one off this path. And so, in a sense, when one really commits to the spiritual path, really commits, then that's in a sense when one has to be most vigilant. And he said that evil will constantly, and not just those who are strongly committed to the path, but that evil is constantly gnawing at humanity. So, but back to the quote. So, as the light gets stronger in an individual, this force, evil, ups its attempts to pull one off the path, and yet simultaneously, paradoxically, as this evil force tries to draw one off the path, if one stays solid and clear, it actually ends up strengthening the person because one then learns how to resist evil, to recognize evil, and to say no to evil. So, this thing, evil's evil, and yet it serves God. It's such an amazing paradox. Evil attracts the good. Bruno Groening said, "When the need is greatest, the Lord God is nearest." It's a very comforting thought. In our moments of desperation and pain and deep suffering, it seems as if God is furthest away. Yet, according to Bruno Groening, actually the opposite is true. That when we're suffering the deepest, and when we're suffering, that's because evil has us, basically. So when we're really caught up in evil, that's actually when God is nearest to us, and it really doesn't seem that way. And there's a beautiful parable that really speaks to this, and it's called "Footprints in the Sand." And I'm going to paraphrase it, and I'll probably paraphrase it very badly, but please forgive me. So this person had a conversation with God, and it's been like, God, life has been so hard. And God was like, I was with you always here. And God shows this person this vision of two sets of footprints walking along in the sand. Sorry, I'm about to cry. This story really touches me. And then as the person walks through their life path, at some points, there's only one set of footprints. And the person realizes that's when their life was really hard. There was, only one set of footprints. And the person gets angry. It's like, well, when things were roughest, you abandoned me. And God lovingly says, "Oh, child, at those points when it was so rough, I was carrying you." And we've all experienced that when things are just seemingly unbearably painful, they're actually bearable. Something carries us through it over and over again until we get to the point where we're just always carried by God, and that we can face adversity in such a way that where we can face things that in the past 1/10 of that level of challenge would have wrecked us. So, and also to speak to my own experience, I suffered for a very long time. I strove for God and I suffered for a very long time. And then I just really found this path, and I got really clear, and I got really happy, and I got really healthy because my body was a mess before this path. And that, and then, and then evil showed up and tempted me right off this path in the most perfect way. I say perfect tongue in cheek. Um, and I didn't hear that part of the teaching that, that once you get really solid on the good path, the evil will seek to take you off. And it did. It took me off in the most, in hindsight, and now that I'm back on and committed to the path, I can just be like, wow, well played, evil. Like, you got me good. um, um, the short version is, this magical relationship appeared that seemed to be like the perfect relationship, and it just absolutely wasn't. It absolutely wasn't, and it took me right off the path in a very quick manner. So, you know, modern spirituality, especially New Age spirituality, they don't like to talk about things like evil and temptation, um, and the long and short of it is, again, whether you call it evil or ego or delusion, there is immense suffering that happens on this planet. And according to Bruno Groening, that suffering actually serves, in the end, it serves, and it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. Like right now, as we speak, people are starving to death from lack of food on this planet. People are in prison for things they didn't do. Um, People are being held captive and being tortured. Like horrific things are happening right now on this planet. And it's not about focusing on them, and it's not about suffering about them, but it's also not about denying. Um, it's not about denying the fact that these things exist and these things are happening. It's finding that really solid middle ground of being mindful of this force called evil without being fearful of it. You know, even in the Bruno Groening, from my point of view, was one of the purest souls to walk in the public sphere. We hear about these great masters who live in the Himalayas, you know, um, and yet Bruno Groening was right in the public sphere and right in the public eye, working miracles. Like, it's sometimes hard to fathom what it was like. But, Bruno Groening, just for 10 years, he just went around Germany and hundreds of thousands of miracles happened. We don't, 30,000 people would show up, and we don't know how many miracles would happen in one night. For example, there's one, I just read one example of Bruno gave a talk, 100 plus people showed up, and in less than an hour, 75 healings had occurred. And then more healings continued to occur. And that was just 1 hour. So Bruno Groening went about doing good like no one else I've heard of in history next to Christ. Just miracles, what we call miracles. Healings, what we call healings. Bruno Groening didn't even say they were healings. He just said they're the return of order. They just flowed through him. People said that being in his presence, everything shook. The energy, it was like another reality showed up on this earth and happened for 10 years. And how did evil respond to this? He was opposed from the very beginning. He was opposed. Attempts to shut him down, attempts were made on his life. People tried to kill him. And eventually, in a sense, they succeeded in killing him with the healing band. So it's like, if we want to understand, it's hard for us as human beings to understand why the game operates this way. And it's important for us to operate that the game does operate this way. And we can just meditate on the life of Bruno Groening. All this good flowing through him and all this evil coming at him. And he himself said, I'll have to, if I can find the quote really quick. So he quoted the German poet Faust. It is a part of the force which always strives for evil, yet brings about the good. So he was quoting this poet, Gauth. The poem was, the name of the poem is Faust. And then he said, for this reason, I consider it very necessary today to thank all the people who have opposed me, with all of their, for the most part, freely invented lies and dirty methods, for having helped me to become what all my opponents didn't intend. So all this opposition coming at Bruno made him stronger, him facing it. Was it fun? No, probably not. I'm guessing no. But in that, in meditating on, okay, one of the greatest masters in human history steps forward and just blesses this earth, and here's the response he got. The same thing happened to Christ. According to the Buddhist tradition, before achieving enlightenment, the Buddha was tempted by this mysterious being in the Buddhist tradition they call Mara. So I can just talk about this forever, and the long and short of it is, I don't understand why the game is set up this way. Just in my own experience, Bruno Groening's teachings are true. The game is set up in this way. In my brightest, clearest, most solid connection to the divine, when my life was really becoming a life of service and connection to the divine, the deepest temptation came my way, and I fell for it. And in that, I learned so much. So I hope this was helpful. And in the end, Bruno Groening said, Satan is mighty, God is almighty. The way I interpret that is, be mindful of this powerful force called evil, called Satan. And I'm still doing research to understand, did Bruno mean Satan was this actual being, or just another name for this force? Regardless, there's this powerful force. Just look around the world. This world was designed to be paradise, and look at what it's become. So this powerful force, and there's this all-powerful force. And actually, there's one more quote I'd like to read. This all-powerful force called God, the good, to help us face and rise above this other force. This is from the book Powers of the Spirit, page 70. In the spiritual realm, the concept of good and evil signifies something other than what people actually take them to mean. Even when someone is completely blameless as far as the laws of the state are concerned, they are, nevertheless, from a spiritual point of view, they can, nevertheless, from a spiritual point of view, be a servant and instrument of evil. As soon as someone doubts the divine and only lets the material world count for something, because they assume they can live their life in a neutral zone without any further consequences, they have nevertheless already started to be influenced by evil, and such a person will sooner or later end up being completely and helplessly at its mercy. In reality, there is no gray zone. that something can occupy without further consequences. So no one should be surprised if the body also falls into disorder as a result of the psychological burdens they have previously been allowed in, for which the individuals themselves are responsible. On the other hand, a spiritual healing of the body is only possible when the person concerned moves towards inner peace and finally has the will and determination to get along with themselves and the world in peace, and never to squander the divine power on anything that is not good, no matter how it has been picked up. So that was just one paragraph. So it's been really important to me on my path to not only understand how the unlimited power of God, but to understand that here on this earth, in this body, we're up against a mighty foe, and we actually need God. Because here's what Bruno Groening says happens once we start to, even in a little way, take on evil. We become influenced by evil and become a servant of evil. And such a person will sooner or later end up being completely and helplessly at its mercy. That's where I got to. I got really far, as they say, I went really far down the hole. And I was striving to be a good person. My efforts were misguided. So in facing evil, we have so much support. It's like we're playing the most intense game imaginable. Like think of something like football where like people just American football where it's just like this. And here in life, we're facing something 100 times more intense. But in facing it and rising above it, there's this opportunity, this, I don't even want to say spiritual, this life opportunity, this existential opportunity for something so glorious. Thanks so much for listening. Much love. And as Bruno Groening said, I wish all of you. So I'll just end with this quote. On the other hand, a spiritual healing of the body is only possible when the person concerned moves towards the inner peace and finally has the will and determination to get along with themselves and the world in peace and never to squander the divine power on anything that is not good, no matter how it has been picked up. To not squander the divine power. And Bruno also spoke of to not lose the divine peace. That's the final victory, is when we can face all of this and not squander the divine power and not lose the divine peace.